Welcome back to the channel and to CarMiZa. I am excited for this video, folks. I'm hoping I can get this part of the project done in one complete video. Let's see how it goes. What I'm working on is going to be the wiring that goes up into the trunk lid. So there's factory wiring. This is the factory cover, just made of plastic here, where the wiring goes. This is about 3/8 of an inch diameter. The wiring fits through there and goes up into the trunk lid for things like the license plate light and such, tail lights, all that. I also need to run some wiring in here for an iPad charger and some lighting up here, and who knows, maybe some other surprises later. So looking at it, I said, all right, maybe I can replicate that over here. For those people who do 3D printing, I don't even know if you can do like a reverse of this. And I said, even so, it's plastic. To me, it looks really cheap. So here is my old school car audio type of creativity idea. Notice again where this 3/8 inch bump out is. We're not going to use this, but instead, I'm going to use this 3/8 inch fuel line, which I will bend. I got a bending tool to basically run parallel to this. We'll weld this onto the trunk arm on both sides. I'll body fill this whole area, but leave a little bump out. So when I'm done, it's gonna look just like this, only it's gonna be completely kind of seamless in here, if you will. Later, when the car gets painted, that whole thing will get resprayed. So in the end, it's gonna look just like that with like a little 3/8 inch bump out there, all painted red, and the wiring will go up in there. So really gonna hide the whole thing and keep it really, really clean. To start out, if you've been following along, you'll know that I redid all of the wiring in the car. Basically, I bought a parts car, sectioned out a bunch of stuff to see in there now, but everything is very, very clean in terms of the wiring, except for the part that goes into the trunk. This is going to be still kind of the way the rest of the car was. So the first step is going to be to clean this mess up, restore all this wiring, get everything to where it needs to be. And then from there, we'll work on building the tubes, I'm going to call it, to go up into the trunk lid. So let's get started. If you're new to following this build, I'll show you something pretty cool. All the flat panels back here are made of aluminum, 1/8 inch aluminum, all machined hardware. And these are the heat sinks for the Zapco Z600s. I took a spare amplifier, sliced it, and made links that are for the end and the center to hide the wiring, and then machined an aluminum cover cap for the ends. Also, if you notice, the amplifier is upside down. It's hollow right now. And I've got two Sony 10-disc changers, one on either side. This bracket that will hold the changer serves as the bottom of the amplifier. Everything, again, is all machined aluminum, done in my driveway with a router and all that. And you can see you even put like a 45-degree chamfer on that, just really to make a nice complete finish. I also have these crazy contraptions I built, which are the shock tower covers. I wanted something extremely solid that would be symmetrical and kind of curved to cover the shock tower area, and that's what you see there. To do this wiring, I needed to kind of expose everything. You can see there's a hole, that's the factory hole where the wiring ran through. So again, step one here is going to be to kind of assess and figure out, I've labeled it so I know where things go, but basically rerun it, figure out the way it runs, and then get this all cleaned up. All right, so what I do to start with this wiring is I electrical tape it every 24 inches or so, give or take. From the factory, it's like that, but the tape is pretty much disintegrated at this point. I identify where things kind of split off, which is the case here. This is the stuff that goes up into the trunk lid. And then this is the stuff that stays in the trunk. It goes along this, again, what I call the near wall, goes to the taillights, all that. But again, just kind of removing all the factory cloth tape, this stuff, identifying where it got what I call molested. Where was that? Stuff like this. There's, aftermarket connections. All this will be redone, soldered, and eventually, once I get everything cleaned up, I will use 9mm Tessa tape, cloth tape, which is the same stuff the factory used, only this is shot. So again, just kind of getting everything tidied up, cleaned up, figure out where everything goes. That's the first order of operations. All right, laying this out is not going too bad at all so far. So what I'm doing is removing all the factory tape. I've got my tape, just kind of holding it and where it's going to split off. I've got that taped up. I've identified and plugged in where things need to plug in. There is this part that goes underneath the car. BMW runs these marker lights. You can see them down there. They go into the side of the rear bumpers right there. And then we've got the electronic solenoid control that's for the gas door. It locks the gas door. There's an actuator there. And then this tail light here. So next what I'll do is test all of this. I'll turn the key on, test everything just to make sure all my lights and everything work back here. And then I'll go to this other section, which is the part that goes up into the trunk lid, which again, that's going to be the part that we're going to run through our tubes. Okay, making progress, but here's what we've got. Always going to run into this kind of stuff. So this is the line, the whole group that goes up into the trunk lid. One thing I've got to be careful of, I'm doing 3/8 inch OD fuel line, which according to my calculation, I measured all this, is going to be a tight fit. So I'm going to make sure it's going to fit, obviously, before I weld stuff onto the trunk bars and all that. I'm also going to make it where I have a connection up underneath here so that I can remove the trunk bar. Up here, there's basically a connection. You guys have seen me take the trunk, lid off on and off several times. I want to plug it down inside of here, and I also want to plug up here. So the wiring that's going to run through here is basically just going to stay in there. There'll be a connector here and another connector down there. Which brings me to the next thing. I'm peeling the tape off, and there's a big bump, and I run into this. So somebody went a little crazy here, cut the wires, probably to get the trunk lid off is my guess, and then spliced everything back in and did some other tie-ins here, it looks like. So what I'm hoping is I can cut this here, if my length is good, attach my connector here. That'll represent the car side connector. This, for the next 10 or 12 inches runs through the tube I'm going to create. Then I do another connector, which goes up into the trunk lid. There's also some other stuff I've got to clean up. Someone tied in here. That's a power. Red in this car is power and brown is ground. So somebody tied in here. At least it's soldered and it was taped up and everything, but I will cut this off. I have an entire box of parts. I probably have another one of these plugs. I'll cut this off down here and solder in a new plug so that it gets rid of all this stuff. So fun stuff. This isn't too bad. If you're not aware, I did this process for the entire car, literally the entire car, and then made an inventory of every electronic part and tested every one of them. I built a big spreadsheet and 100% everything worked. So I'm not afraid of this. It's not bad, but it's an incredible mess because you're dealing with old sticky residue tape. This stuff is all sticky. So once I get all this run and kind of roughed out, I will have to clean everything and then again, retape it all. So I'll show you that process. All right, quick update here. I'm running wires into the trunk lid. It's pretty basic up here. There's the tail lights, which I've popped in. There's the license plate lights. There's a harness for this latch. And then I've got 2 extra harnesses. BMW does an awesome job of not duplicating like the same plug in the same area. They're all unique. Mercedes, you need to learn that. And I've got 2 extra plugs that I cannot figure out what they go to. So I've got a little bit of light reading here. Thank you, Michael Milbert. I've got an entire wiring schematic for the car, and I also have a shop manual. Between the 2 of these, I'll be able to go through, review the schematic, and identify what these are. If they're something that my car doesn't have or something I'm not going to need, then I can remove these wires, which will further ensure that the wiring is going to fit through the tube. I think I'll be okay, even if not. So again, you can basically see I've got stuff plugged in where it plugs in. I've got a rough idea where my wiring is going to go here. I've laid it out here. And then this is where that kind of I'll call it a mess down here is. And I think I'm going to be all right with where that's going to be because I'm going to go, again, all the way up into here. And I'll have a socket probably on the top side of the rear deck. So pretty solid progress, I would say. This is kind of the not fun part, especially again, because it's just a total mess, but making progress. I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. And then tomorrow night, I'll continue wiring. I'll figure out what's going on with these guys. I'll have, again, some additional work to do, soldering and redoing a bunch of this stuff. So little by little, it's coming along. All right, this is not a slam dunk. It's going to be a little tricky. Here's where I'm at. I took the area where all of these wires were cut, basically, and spliced back together. I cut them off, removed the trunk lid, and what I'm going to do now is kind of work backwards. I'll fix all this stuff up, and I'm going to put these wires where they should go, how I want to run them, and get an idea as to what that length looks like. What I'm going to end up doing is I'll have a connection that comes out of the tube at the car and another one up here at the trunk lid, because again, as you can see, I can remove the trunk lid with the arms included. And I can also, there's a couple of 10 mils, I can remove the arms. I want the flexibility to just leave the wiring in the tube and be able to connect it at the car side or at the lid side. So that's what I'm working on. It's going to be sketchy. I want to make sure that all these wires are going to fit in that tube. If not, I've got an option, but hopefully they do. Let's see how it goes. All right, I cut a very small piece of the tubing, and as you can see, it's tight. I may have to put some WD-40 in there as I push the wires through, but it fits. It's going to be close, especially once it's all bent and everything. It's going to be a good time, but I know I can get them all in there. So that is cool. Continuing on. Show you a quick funny here. Last night I was going nuts trying to figure out what these two harnesses go to. Again, I pulled out the wiring schematic and was going nuts. Turns out there is a actuator, kind of like a door lock actuator. I've already mounted it. They're making sure nobody can get to this thing. It goes way back behind this panel, and this is what it does, and you can see the mechanism there. It controls the lock and unlock. I just wanted to point out also, again, if you've been following me, you've seen me do this before, but if I've got stuff like this where I've dynamatted over it, I'll take a punch and I will just carefully remove the dynamat. That way I'm not tearing it. Everything is nice. And I still have enough room where I can adjust this should I need to, but it is set for now. So, all right, continuing on. Okay, quick update. It's going well. I have to play around with where I'm going to route stuff in this panel. You can see I've removed some dynamat for the clips. I'm kind of playing around with it, but that I can deal with later. That's kind of pretty easy. The most important thing is, where do I need to extend, if at all, these wires, which I don't want to have to do, and I think I'm going to be okay. So here's what I got. This blue tape represents where this comes to, kind of where it would come into the panel. If I was to cut this over here, put a connector there, and then be like, all right, cool, that takes care of that, and then I'll just run this part through the tube, right? The problem is it's not long enough. And that's, again, I cut where the other people had cut in the past. Not a big deal. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this. I'll cut back what I don't need because I'll have extra, and pretend that's my connector. From here to go around this down and have plenty of slack to go in the car, I need about 30 inches. So here's what I did. I had a parts car, and I harvested all the wiring out of it. So I probably have this wiring, but again, I'd rather not make connections if I don't have to. Kind of follow me here. So what I've done is, this is the trunk lid wiring. All right, and previously this was tied together with the main harness that went into the trunk, and it kind of wrapped around the shock tower. It went up there. So it was kind of a long run. So what I've done is I undid my tape back down to this fuse box here. So you can see this is all, again, I'll call it the trunk wiring. And now what I'm going to do is take my trunk lid wiring, run it over here, run it up with all this factory. This will all get redone. And now when I do that, and I just have it zip tied just to hold it, I've marked this as well. So you can see that blue tape basically represents, I'll cut this metal back a little bit, if needed even, and I'll be able to do my socket right here. So I can unplug it, push the wire through, and be able to pull the trunk lid from there. Which leaves me, trust me on this, from that blue tape to this end, 30 inches. So I'm going to cut the wiring here. This will be the piece that goes in the tube. I'll put a socket on either end. We'll do a socket on this side of this wire. So again, like right here for the car side, and another one on this side for the trunk lid side. So again, I'll be able to take the trunk lid off either with the hinges on or the arms on or not. So, all right, keep cruising along here. And there you go. There's my chunk. I cut it. That's going to be plenty long enough. And I've got, you know, solid 6 inches on either end to be able to do my connector and go from there. All right, I am back. It is Sunday and I've got pretty much the whole day to work on this. All right, here's what I did next. I just took a piece of string, ran it along this area here. Again, just to confirm, and I got my 30 inches that I suspect I'll need. It's probably a bit more than I need. So what I'm going to do next is cut this. I bought a tool, just basically a pipe cutting tool. I'll cut this to 30 inches, and then I need to remove this coating, which I think is going to be easier to do before I bend it. Okay, if you've never seen a pipe cutter, this is the way it works. It's basically a wheel inside there, and you just turn it, give it another little bit of a turn. This is a real small cheapy one that I bought when I bought a flare kit. We're going to be flaring the ends of this as well, which will help, I figured, with the wiring. That way when I pull the wiring through, I don't risk chafing the wiring, the insulation of the wiring, especially because it's going to be tight. Bending this as well, I think is going to be probably the hardest part of this whole project. And that's what I'm doing next. After we get this cut and this coating off, it will be bending it, especially because the trunk arm, as you can see here, as I cut this, notice it's kind of twisted, the shape of the arm, so it's not perfectly straight. It's not like I just need to do those bends and I'm good. It's a complex curve. So that should make things fun. I don't have any idea what I'm in here. There's my cut with this. I have a feeling we're going to be using some MAP gas as well. This stuff is cheap. It's readily available at AutoZone, so if I need to run and get more, I can easily do that. So, all right, on to the next step. In typical Precision Mike fashion, I've got my to-do list again. Anytime I do a project like this, I spend as much time, if not more, planning it out than I actually do executing to hopefully ensure that it goes well. All right, as far as the coating goes, that is the before and that is the after. 10 minutes alone with some sandpaper. I did a 60 grit and then down to 100 grit. Again, the objective of removing the coating is to make sure that when this gets welded, we get a good strong weld. The next part is going to be to go on and start bending. And I'm going to use, this is kind of an offcut from this shorter piece of pipe. I have 2 different lengths of this tubing. That's what they had in stock at AutoZone. I'll use this to practice bending. I've never done this before. I don't know what to expect, and I'm going to give it a shot. So let's try it. All right, so to bend the pipe or tubing, whatever you guys call this, fuel line, whatever, fuel line. I got this tool off Amazon, and this basically the pipe goes in, you go like that, you lean it against this edge, and you can put the required bend on it. So again, I've never tried this. Inside of here, there's 3 different tracks for various diameters of pipe. I'm gonna try just a small bend here at the very end, see what it does. I don't know how much leverage this is gonna take, if I'm gonna need heat. Pretty good force required, that's for sure. And there's my bend. It's all right, but I notice it's kind of closing down the end just a slight bit. The wiring going through here, there's 14 wires of different sizes, and it is going to be tight. So I think this is going to be a little tricky. Let me try a little MAP gas, heating this up, and see if it's a little bit more tame when we bend it. Okay, I'm also thinking the vise is going to help, but again, I might be limited after I start doing my bends on the real piece. For those of you who've done this before, you're probably laughing at me. Thanks a lot, I appreciate it. Just kidding. All right, let's see what happens here. We'll apply some heat. I don't know quite how much, but we'll play around with it and see what happens. Let's see what that does. We don't want to cave it in. I'll go further back in my piece. Definitely easier to bend it, but I want to see what it looks like. Man, I'll tell you, this is not... The handles on this tool are not as long as they should be, in my opinion. You can't get much leverage. Let's get this out. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It's all right if it's not perfectly round, because as long as there's enough space in there for the wiring to fit, but I'm not 1,000% impressed, or even 100%. So, all right, I'm gonna play around a little bit here off camera, see what I can come up with, and I'll check in shortly. All right, slow and steady. What time's AutoZone open till? I don't know if I'm going to get this on the first try, guys. It's definitely tricky, especially because of the compound curves on the trunk arm. So if you notice, I would say this, looking at it from this perspective, it's pretty much where it needs to be. But then here, you can see I've got a little bit of, I have to add a curve here to try to get this to curve down. This is going to be really tricky. I got to do it on both sides. But I think, again, you get the concept there. Once this is done, it gets welded and, you know, the whole thing gets painted and all that. So I'll continue on making my bends. Let's see how it goes. All right, definitely a work in progress, but here's what I've got. Obviously the trunk lid's out, and what I can do is carefully slip this in and just kind of get an idea of placement. I can see we're gonna have to do a little bit of very minor surgery on the panel, but that's okay. I'm still tweaking that end, but again, we're slowly coming along. All right, quick check-in. Not terrible. Kind of what I envisioned, I guess, but this is kind of hard, guys. I'm going into completely uncharted waters here. So one quick thing, this was like right up against here, and I needed to straighten it out like this. So as you can see here, I added another zip tie and very carefully took a screwdriver, put it inside there. The biggest fear I have here, well, one of them is collapsing this, right? Because if I collapse this at all, wiring's not going to fit for sure. And then I just gently pulled on this while pushing down on this. So I was able to bend it. It's thin wall steel, so it is, you know, to some degree, obviously flexible. This gets a little weird here, but again, I'm going to body work this whole thing in, and it's going to be, you know, once it's in the car. So for example, this is the driver's side. It's going to be, that's kind of down in the bottom. You really won't notice that, I don't think. And again, I'll mold it all together. Here is, be careful here, how we're looking here. So pretty cool, I think. That's right where the factory wiring went in. I'll decide on whether or not I want to fill this all in. I want people to know that, you know, when I'm showing the car, I'll say, hey, yeah, I used 3/8 inch fuel line to run my wiring. And I think maybe if I leave it like this, it would be cool because you can totally see where that is. But otherwise, this will all be finished off, but they'll be separate here. That might be cool. We'll see. The other thing that's a little bit weird, and it might be okay, actually, is you'll notice this bottom part is kind of low. I got to be really careful with this enters into the car. Obviously, I need to cut this, and then I'm going to flare it. This ended up being, I cut it way longer than I needed to. Figured that piece that I showed you was just going to be a cut off scrap. But now I need to figure out, I think what I'll do is cut this, you know, maybe about here, flare it, and then that's where my wiring will go. You know, I'll have my connector and goes into the car. But I don't know, man. I think I'm apprehensive to try to do anything more with it because I don't want to screw it up, which is, I feel like it's playing roulette here, right? I spin a wheel and am I good or do I wreck it? So again, it's pretty cheap. So if I do, I can go get more. Oh, I also heated it up and bended it this way. So as you can see, I mean, we're really close to being tight here. We might be able to very carefully clamp it, But again, we want to be really careful when I go to weld it. So this, I'm not worried about that. I'll fill in that gap. But overall, I think it's pretty slick. I mean, when you compare it to, comparing it to this, it's the same philosophy, and it is going to look so much cooler. So, all right, I'm going to keep chugging along here, kind of figure out what my next move is, and I'll keep you posted. All right, I got my piece cut to length. Pretty happy with it. And the next thing I'm going to do is flare the end. I did this on the cutoff piece, and you can see what the effect was there. The objective here, again, is when I go to feed the wiring, I don't have a sharp edge that I'm going to be, you know, getting really stressing the insulation on. So the way that this tool works, as far as I can tell, I got this from Amazon. It's just a, we'll call it a Fisher Price version. Pretty basic, but it'll serve the purpose. Let me get this tightened up and ready. So basically, this part is going to hold the fuel line, and then this part, you can see there, is got this concave thing. It's going to cause a flare at the end. Very carefully. All right, I think that should do it. And I just need a little bit, just again, so that I don't have a sharp edge. Might want a little bit more. Let me get this wrapped up and I'll show you. All right, there we go. That end is good. Kind of tough to see, maybe a little bit on camera, but you can see when I go to feed the wires in, it'll be a little bit easier. I need everything I can get because this is going to be, I think that's after bending these, and then I got to still match this and do another one of these, replicate it for the other side. Getting the wiring through is going to be a tricky task, but we'll get through it. All right, carrying on. Okay, here's the side profile. And again, this bend is a little weird, but I'm fine with it. And then this, if you notice, it kind of hangs a little bit lower, which I'll need to, because I need to, again, from here goes my wires into the car. So I think that side is good to go. I do have, when I put the iPad panel on, this is hitting just a little bit of where I built it up. I can trim that away, it'll be fine, and there's plenty of room for me to run the wiring in here. So I think this part is good. My next move is going to be to replicate one of these, build another one for the other side, and hopefully end up with the same kind of bends and shapes so it's symmetrical. And then we're going to probably wire wheel this paint away and prep it for welding. All right, so again, the next thing I'm going to do is hopefully replicate this as near as I can for the other side. One other quick thing too, I track all my hours on my builds. This took 2.5 hours for me to get to this point, kind of figuring it out, laying it out, bending it, doing everything I needed to, which I don't consider to be that bad. And I was able to get it complete on my first shot. So I do have plenty of extra tubing, so if I screw up this other side, I can start over. So, all right, let me go ahead and knock this one out. Quick check-in. So bend up the second one, don't like it. The bends are not as symmetrical as I can get them. If I claim to be Precision Mike, let's be precision. So I'm back from AutoZone with a new piece, and I'm going to redo that side. Okay, second attempt on the passenger side worked out quite well. We're really close, 90+% right now. So it's about 3 o'clock. I'm going to go grab some lunch inside and come back out and continue. My goal is to get these 100% prepped and dropped off for welding today to my son-in-law, James. So a little bit more tweaking to do. I've got to grind down the paint where he's going to be welding, and then do the final attachment, which obviously I won't use plastic zip ties for. So coming along, it's kind of meeting my vision, I would say. Some things I still want to figure out, but overall, quite happy. And it, like I say, it definitely is what I imagined. So, all right, I'll be back here shortly. What's the phrase? Flame suit on. This dent was not there. I put it there intentionally using a bolt. I put a bolt there. It's a big giant hollow cavity. If you're concerned about me damaging the car, don't forget we've got 13-inch woofers in the kick panels. So I wanted to be able to have kind of a dimpled area for the tube to come in. This has nothing to do with, well, I should have made the tube taller, because again, I wanted to slip underneath the panel that I made for the iPad. So basically I put a bolt there, very carefully tapped the metal and formed that. This was a factory crease that was there. So when it's in, the tube is in, basically you can see the wiring will come through here. And this also will allow for, I've got this arm right now. I need to allow clearance, right, for adjustment. So right now the arm is as far that way as possible. And you can see I just have enough clearance, and it kind of looks like it was from the factory, I think. So, all right, let me show you one other thing on the panel. All right, on the panel, this was the piece that I left as is, where the factory wiring came up through. You can see kind of where my finger is. It was like a little trench. I took a Dremel and just kind of accentuated that, and my wiring can run along here, or by the time it gets over to here, you could fit your finger in here. There's plenty of room. And then I mimicked this on the other side, just using, again, a Dremel to open this up, and now I can run my wires the same way. And I'll show you, I'll put the panel on and show you how that meets up with the tube. All right, the trunk lid entry is what I come up with names for all my stuff, and that way on my spreadsheets I can reference things. So trunk lid entry for the tube is done. It is really came out nice, I think. I think what I'm going to do, and again, my hope and thought is to get everything done during this particular video, but if not, in the comments, I'd be curious. What I'm going to do, I want your opinion. I'm going to basically, this will get welded, and then imagine I just take filler and I go like that with my finger. I want this to be visible still so that I can explain to people, yeah, I use fuel line around my wires, check it out. And I'm thinking that I'll leave like this as a gap here so that you can clearly see that this is 3/8 inch fuel line. I'll kind of seam seal it and bond it here, but it'll break off there. Again, curious what you guys think. I could hide it, and then, you know, it'd be like trying to explain it to somebody and they may not pick up what I'm putting down, but I think it looks pretty cool. I'm really happy with my bends. I just checked both sides. Everything is good there. The last tweak I need to make is entry into the car. I want to see how is this going to look in the car. Is this going to be too close? Do I need to bend this more straight? This stuff is carefully pliable, so I may need to do a little bit of tweaking, and I may do some adjustment to that. But I'll pull the hinges off, or the arms off. I'll mount them in the car without the lid and kind of play around and see how things look. All right, I just tried this arm. This is the driver's side arm in the car. Sorry it didn't take you long for that part, but basically I, put the pin in place, moved it, and I wanted to see what's this actually going to look like. How is this going to look? Most importantly, is it safe? Do I have room for slack and the harness and all of that? Generally speaking, I do, but here's what I determined. I want to cut about 1/4 inch off this, so I'm going to cut this. I'll re-taper this. It's pretty easy to do. And I've also determined I want to close up that gap. I want to get this tight up against here, so I'll very carefully do that, and then I'll mimic the same thing on the other side. This one, if you notice too, notice the gap here relative to this. It was off. If you had an eagle eye, you caught that already. Again, I'm full disclosure, but I had a feeling I was going to need to trim this. So I'll use this as my reference and then trim this one back and do the same thing and see how it looks. I will have to, one other thing, and I'm going to leave this for, I've got a long list of stuff for upholstery prep. That area right there, this edge, I want to take back another 1/4 inch. But to do that, I've got to pull all this out, and it's kind of a big project. I figure I'll wait until I'm getting ready to do the upholstery for that, which isn't that far up, believe it or not. So, all right, continuing on. All right, and this cut is needed, and the flare is complete. All right, so now that's what the end looks like. I did a very slight bend, just brought it up against the arm, and now I'm going to install it and see how it all looks, kind of dry run it. All right, so this is why I didn't bring you with last time. It's a little tight, but looking at it, I can see where the wiring is going to go, and if you notice, up in this area is hollow. See that big bump right there? So just below that is all hollow, and that's where I'm going to put the slack and the plug. So I'm good with that. I think it looks good. Now I got to do the other side. All right, I ended up taking off another 3/16, and now it's exactly where I want it. So now I'll replicate the same thing on the other side. All right, mock-up complete. Looks really cool. If I do say so myself. A All right, again, mimicking the concept, let's go take a closer look here, of what the factory plastic cover does, only this is going to be way cooler, I think. And you can see, goes up into the rear package shelf there very nicely. Everything moves good. I will, again, I'm going to need to tweak the, I call it the hanging shelf there, that piece of aluminum that I built. I'll widen that out by 1/4 to allow for this. But that's later. That's kind of pre-upholstery stuff. But again, I think it looks pretty cool. And I like this notion of separating it here to be able to distinguish and, again, show that it's something different and I made it. So I'll do one more test fit on the actual trunk lid just to make sure everything is good with the placement. Then I'll pull it all apart. I'll pull both, all 4 pieces apart, sand the arms themselves in preparation for welding. And then I'll attach the tubes to the arms. I've got a couple different options I'm going to try there and get it all mocked up for James, who will be doing the welding. Yeah, in case you're wondering, I'm going through an absurd number of zip ties. Buy them at Harbor Freight. They're real cheap. I think this is like $5, $4 or $5 for 100. So good deal. All right, once again, trunk lid fitment. I didn't expect it to change. Nothing really moved. I've got my marks. Where are they? So you can see right here where I lined everything up. And I'm back to the original placement. So tubes go in there just as they should. All right, time to sand this down in preparation for welding. All right, this is what it looks like after I sanded it. Just need to make sure that when James does the welding, we're steel to steel. And that's plenty. So I'll show you the process. Very simple, just using a 5-inch random orbital with a 40 grit pad and knocking off this high spot. We'll see how this goes. It's dark out and I got my headlamp on. I went ahead and marked this with a Sharpie in terms of where I need to sand while the piece was on. So here we go. I won't do the whole thing, but you get the idea. All right, that's a wrap for tonight. I am ready for welding. Notice I took off the regular wire ties. I took some heavy gauge wire here, spun it, got everything nice and tight. I've also put some reference marks for James, and I'll review the whole thing with him. He did the welding of the kick panels. He's the only other person that worked on this car, probably will be, other than Earl when we get to tuning. So hopefully tomorrow I can run over to his place after work, drop these off, and then he'll probably bring him to his work and then get him welded up. After that, we're gonna do the body work on him and continue on from there. All right, folks, so it is the next day. The parts were dropped off to James, and without me thinking about it, he's like, wow, this is gonna be really hard. If you consider the tubing, he needs to be able to weld through that and connect it to the trunk arms without blowing through it, which is going to be really hard because it's a very thin wall steel. So he said, I'll do my best and hopefully everything comes out. So fingers crossed, obviously, hopefully that comes out good. With that, I'm going to wrap up this video. I'm trying to keep my videos a little bit shorter. Some of the recent videos were over an hour long, so I want to be careful there. I apologize. I know I was hoping to get this whole part of the project done in this video, and that's not the case. So likely, I'm not going to commit to anything, but in the next video, we'll get the parts back from James. Fingers crossed, the welding goes good. We'll get it all body filled, primered. I'm not going to paint it yet. That'll happen when I paint the car. And kind of take care of all the rest of the wiring. And I've got a few miscellaneous loose ends I want to tie up in the trunk area too, to get that done. So if you have not already, please like and subscribe. I've also noticed that I'm having a big influx of people that are watching the CarMiZa content. If you're not aware, there's like 50 plus videos on my channel just for this car. I've got some other videos for the other AMG cars that I've got, but the majority of the content is on CarMiZa, and the earliest stuff has by far the least amount of views. So if you're interested in checking out kind of the early days, I literally have the day I pulled the car up to my house when I first bought it, and that was over 4 years ago, unfortunately, and here I am still working on it. But labor of love, I guess. But again, I apologize that this video was not complete. We didn't get the job done, but I'm I'm hopeful that in the next video we'll get it done. So thanks once again for watching. Oh, one last thing. I also recently, I posted it tonight. I'm not sure how quickly I'll get this video up, but I recently acquired some Sony some C90s, CDX C90 single disc CD players that I'm going to be putting one of those in the front of the car just so that I have the ability to play a single disc if I'm sitting in the garage and I want to pop in a bunch of different CDs, listen, tuning, whatever the case may be. So I bought a few of those and none of them worked, and I kind of pieced them together and I got one up and working, and I believe I can get a second one up and working as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, that's another video I posted. It's only about 21 minutes long, but it's got some cool content as far as the C90s go. So thanks once again. There'll be another video coming very soon. And for anybody watching for the AMG content, I've got some stuff I'm working on there as well. But that's going to be it for now. Thanks once again. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.